Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Dan, the voice behind ThatKaitoDan, and welcome to my review for RWBY Volume 5 Episode 11, The More the Merrier. Before we begin, I just want to say Happy New Year to every one of you. I hope you all had a fantastic 2017, and I'm wishing you all the best for the new year. 2017 was a major landmark for the channel, and I owe you guys so much for the love and support that you've given me, even if it's just sharing your comments every so often. I thank you so much dearly from the bottom of my heart, and I promise to do my best to entertain you all some more moving forward for the new year. Thank you so much. Also, before we get properly started, be on the lookout for my upcoming video on my top 10 favourite RWBY Chibi Season 2 skits. It should be on the way very soon. And finally, be sure to watch the latest episode from the official sources, and be careful as spoilers are ahead. Let's head now into the first viewer comment section of the year, and with the climactic finale of the Belladonna attack, seems a lot of you guys were happy with what you got, and are excited for what can come next from this side of the story. Like Animalia555, who'd like to see how Weiss and Ilya interact with each other given their distinct backgrounds and personalities. While Zero Enchiladas notes with the Outbanes being cut from the chain, Blake's group have given the others quite the advantage, since Adam and the White Fang aren't aware of the Faunus army heading their way. Also, Scatterbrain noted some similarities with the Corsic and Gira fight, and a certain iconic brawl that went beyond plus ultra not too long ago. Could be quite the cool shout out indeed if that was the case. As ever, please be sure to leave your comments in the latest episode review, and tune in next time to see if your post gets featured next time out. So after a rather rough hand dealt its way from the episode leading into it, I'm glad to say that there were plenty of positives to be found in episode 10, as it wrapped up an emotional fight in Menagerie. As Zero said in his comments, now the good guys have Blake and a host of other Faunus ready to back them up in Haven, and hopefully they get there soon enough to make a difference. But as the show took a week break for Christmas, I was concerned that maybe the RWBY would not be able to keep up this strong reception without losing steam again. So, did they pull it off, or was the final episode of 2017 less of a bang and more of a whimper? Let's find out. We open on Jesus Christ! Sorry, but dang, I didn't expect the full moon and remnant to look like that. Though I guess it makes sense, given a fuller shape would need the broken pieces coming together like that. But now I'm very desperate to get more answers on what is the cause for the damages in the first place. Anyway, it is the full moon, so it is the attack on Haven, and it's time for the RWBY Juniper gang to meet up with Lionheart in a rather nicely designed room that obviously signals what's about to transpire given its size. Even so, I definitely like the look of it, especially that statue. It has that smooth ceramic feel to it, though I'm not sure if it's any kind of symbolism going on there. Lionheart, by the way, definitely needs to take that advice from Watts back in episode 1, cause his improvisational skills suck. The dude isn't doing a good job masking the fact that this is a setup. His voice is shaky, he's asking silly questions, he's clearly on edge for what he claims is just a simple strategy meeting. Though it doesn't take long for the ambush to be revealed after Yang spots Raven watching close by, and Crow fires off a flippin' warning shot. There's a neat transformation sequence by the way from the bandit afterwards using Leo for cover. A cool way to make the switch back to human while using her stance next to the headmaster to highlight right away that something's very wrong. Raven then starts talking about how Crow's scheming to attack her, which is kinda true. I mean, he was planning to strike at her camp, but only as a plan B if final talks to get her to hand over Vernal didn't work out. Though I guess for Raven, the fact that he even considered it is bad enough. Even so, Crow still tries to get her to see the benefit of working together against Salem, but Raven's having none of it. she can't see any way to defeat her, and won't take up her brother's offer to fight an impossible battle. It's a big reason why she left in the first place. RWBY then tries her hand like the optimistic soul that she is, which is actually kind of interesting since I'm sure she's very aware of how troubled the relationship is between Yang and her birth mother. But it is true to her nature trying to do what she can to make a difference and create hope in those who feel there is none. RWBY even tries giving some examples of the impossibles that they've already achieved, having already survived past scrapes with Salem's forces, so why not join up as a group and better the odds? Raven's response though is quite fascinating as well, as she says that RWBY sounds just like her mother. It's small, but it is good to hear something in regards to what kind of person Summer was, and from the perspective of someone like Raven too, given their ties in the past. Add to that Raven's sour tone towards RWBY's request, and the mention of her old teammate, and I wonder if, perhaps, Raven didn't view Summer and her own hopeful heart in a warm light. With how little we know about Team Stark's past, it's just speculation at the moment, but until we get further information, I'm gonna keep my eye on that potential issue. Raven's answer, by the way, is made violently clear as she opens up a portal and a fireball rocks RWBY off her feet, signaling Cinder's grand entrance alongside Emerald, Mercury and Vernal. As if that wasn't bad enough, things get really ugly with Hazel's arrival. The big guy is here alongside Adam, who's outside with the White Fang, prepping the destruction of Haven's CCT tower. And with a lockdown in motion, our heroes are trapped in the ambush, unable to stop the scheme without a fight. Any doubts that Ozpin and Crow had about Leo's standing is obviously confirmed by now, and even though the headmaster looks conflicted, his actions go deeper than allowing this ambush to happen, as Cinder drops the info that Leo's been in Salem's pocket even before the Vital Festival tournament, and he provided Cinder's group with the means to enter the tournament as Haven students. So not only does he have the blood of the Haven Huntsman that he's allowed Salem's lot to kill on his hands, but his support aided the fall of Beacon, the splintering of relations between the kingdoms, and of course the many deaths as a result of the incident. Jeez, Leo. I mean, I feel sorry for you a little, but you royally fucked up. While I understand that he was afraid of Salem and he felt that there was no other way to stay alive, his survival has led to a catastrophic chain reaction that rocked the entire world. He'll likely never make up for it now if he somehow makes it out alive, and he knows that too. Of course, Crow is fuming that Leo's the one responsible for all the Haven Huntsmen who have died, and Cinder doesn't make the losses hurt any less by teasing that they would have all died regardless of Leo's aid. It's at this point that Jaune speaks up, and he has had enough. He can't stand the fact that Cinder is making light of all those that's slain by their actions, and of course with his wounds over Pyrrha's death, this rings even more personal for him, seeing Cinder so proud of what she's done. Gotta say, some major props to Miles for his acting here. This is a scene that we all knew was coming, and even though he's not really had a lot to do in this volume, I'm glad to see that he's given a crucial and high-strung moment in Jaune's personal arc the right amount of genuine, pained, vengeful fury that it requires. We know Jaune's been wanting payback for Pyrrha, and now Cinder is right here in front of him, he's not gonna waste it. Though he gets extremely fired up after Cinder says that she doesn't even remember him. Ouch! That's quite the damning comment from the Vixen. It's kinda like that scene in the live-action Street Fighter movie with M. Bison and Chun-Li. Jaune won't ever forget Cinder, the person who was responsible for the worst day of his life. But to Cinder, Jaune and by extension Pyrrha weren't worth remembering. After that, Jaune's emotions get the better of him and he charges in, claymore sword form in hand. Though right away, you can tell that he's easily outmatched. Despite the fact that his strike had enough power to shake the statue's chains behind them, Cinder blocked it with ease and barely budged an inch. The blonde has definitely grown strong, but he's facing a full maiden and already has his back against the ropes, causing Ruby to try and help before Emerald cuts her off. At this point, everyone's getting their own personal bout in this melee, with a big one being the long overdue rematch between Yang and Mercury, who's happy to remind her of their last encounter. We also have Raven ordering Vernal to take on Weiss without wasting her maiden power, while she deals with her brother, who says that Raven's crossed the line working alongside Salem, and the two siblings decide to toss their family bonds aside as they clash blades. After Weiss and Vernal begin to rumble in a fight that I've actually been quite excited for since that last butting of heads, we also see the other fight that was teased in the opening get started, with Ren and Nora taking on Hazel, who continues to state his intent of avoiding fighting if need be. Hazel really is a very curious element to the villains because of this unique side of him, and while I am of course hoping that Ren and Nora make it out of it okay, I'm excited to see what he's like in this fight, especially since he is actually getting his hands dirty by fighting bare-fisted. In the meantime, Oscar has snuck up to Leo, who just brushes him off as just some kid. However, it's now that we actually see a new detail to Lionheart that we didn't know of before. The dude is actually a lion faunus, with his trait being revealed to be a tail. Well, that's a surprise. I mean, I'm sure many of us did think that he could have been a faunus when we first heard of him, given, his lion motif. But after no sign of a faunus trait at all throughout the volume so far, I think we all just assumed he was a regular human. That has me thinking though, if Leo being a faunus is common knowledge, then even though Adam is preaching what he is doing is for the good of the faunus, he's aiming to topple a kingdom that's run by one of his own kind. True, the race connection didn't stop him from killing Sienna, but he's willing to crush a high-ruling faunus while saying that faunus must become the dominant race. The dude really does have some warped morals if even someone like Leo is worth slaying along the way, even if he may be asking for it right now. That's not the only notable detail of course, as I'm sure everyone's caught notice of that thing on Leo's arm, which he reveals to be a multi-elemental casting wheel / buckler shield, with various types of dust that he can use to fire off charges, even in combinations, as seen with a mixture of fire and wind dust used to make a flaming rock that fires off at Oscar. Wicked cool weapon concept, more of a defensive bit of equipment fitting a mage type of fighter compared to most others. But give the farm boy credit, he doesn't trade off for Ozpin to deal with this. He stays in control while taking the hit, showing his bravery as he then draws out the cane, ready for his first proper fight. Now Leo starts to realize who he's dealing with, but not before Oscar goes charging in on the lion in a short but very nice beatdown. The young lad's training and muscle memory from Ozpin has done him well already in terms of fighting style, and the animation helps support that. It's extremely agile and sharp, just like the kid himself, showing that he's already a skilled fighter. Meanwhile, Ozpin's wondering to himself what happened to his former trusted ally, and Leo is stunned to see that Ozpin is here. He knew he would return eventually, but this still comes as a surprise to him, which doesn't really do Leo any favors over his actions. He still turned his back on Ozpin despite knowing that he would return, and I'm sure Ozpin would have helped him if he could. But Leo truly shows just how much his cowardice is in control, as he believes that with Ozpin in this young, weak form, he could subdue him and bring him to Salem as a way of earning back his freedom. He said it himself before that he's crossed the line after all he's done, so now he just wants out, even if it means completely betraying Ozpin. This is some really investing stuff. I know Leo means well, but it's a foolish man that could make even more bad decisions if he isn't stopped, and I can't wait to see what happens next now that Leo is risking it all for his own neck. This makes Oscar a little bit more nervous now that it's clear that Leo won't hold back, but Ozpin still trusts in Oscar, giving him the push to keep fighting. We then check in on Weiss, who's forced into playing a bit more defensively with the ruthless attacks of Vernal keeping Weiss on her toes. It's becoming too much for her to the point that Weiss tries to buy herself some time to summon the Knight. But before it can be fully brought out, Vernal rips a massive laser beam right through the Knight in one shot. She no doubt remembered the Knight's appearance at the camp and didn't want to deal with that big bad boy. Though that's one hell of a blast to take it out. Even without her maiden powers, Vernal is far from weak. Back to Jaune and Cinder, who is still toying with him, doing her best to cut at the lad's psyche with her insults as much as her weapon is. While at the same time, we also see that Ruby and Emerald are still going at it. I like how a lot of these fights are flowing with each other, and while it does mean that we're not getting a lot of longer, large-scale fights just yet, it is the first few moments of the battle itself, and we still got plenty of time left in the volume for hopefully some more bigger spells of action. Back on topic, Emerald vouches her loyalty to Cinder above Salem, and there's a cool bit of semblance trickery faking out RWBY with a Cinder hallucination, masking her next attack. And then there's this awesome transition following a stray bullet shot right back to Weiss, which is easily the best transition so far. And it ties in nicely into the best sequence of this episode. A side-on angle portion of the fight with both girls constantly on the move in one seamless sequence that echoes the one seen in the character short. I'm really starting to like these kind of shots in one fixed place, as it is a decent change of pace when showing off a longer sequence, though I don't want it to be a consistently used one, only safe for fitting fights where both combated styles to benefit the most with the extra direction. However, Weiss's next attempt at summoning becomes her undoing as Vernal fires an ugly to watch heavy hitting shot at point blank range right into her, breaking Weiss's aura and causing her to scream out in pain. Cinder, the manipulative bitch she is, uses this to tease Jaune some more, asking if he'll let Weiss die now as well. Jaune's head isn't in the right place to be dealing with Cinder, who excels at twisting her foe's spirit, but now that she's about to end it with one last attack, RWBY spots it and freaks out, recalling the final moments at Beacon's tower with another dear friend at risk of being killed by Cinder. And just like back then, something inside RWBY snaps, the Reaper screaming out, unleashing her Silver Eyes power. But not for long, as Emerald managed to knock her out mid-blast. Won't lie, I'm kinda glad that happened. She's still yet to try and master her new Silver Eyes power, and I don't want RWBY to release it again in such a dramatic moment without having some hold on it, as I fear it would be too much of a Deus Ex Machina to use all the time in such dire situations, when we know so little about its capabilities and more about its history. At least the amount of power that did slip out left its mark on Cinder, who drops down clutching her arm in pain. I think it's certain that Cinder's arm is grimified thanks to gaining the maiden power through that beetle grim. That's why RWBY Silver Eyes is able to knock her down even in such a small burst, while it doesn't affect anyone else, including Vernal, so it can't be a maiden damaging power. Only the grim as per Crow's explanation previously. Cinder is able to get back on her feet just before Jaune lands a decent strike, and his attack barely clips her mask. And now she's absolutely furious that a failure with a death wish like him would even think to try and defeat her. Because of this, she definitely wants to make Jaune suffer. No more mind games, just pure pain. But Jaune is defiant in the face of death. He'd willingly sacrifice himself if it buys the others time. In his eyes, he doesn't matter as much as they do. It's obvious who's inspiring Jaune's actions here, and it is fitting for the kind of considerate and noble person Jaune is, but I wonder if this is him having a death wish indeed, fueled more by his pain over Pyrrha rather than being inspired by her final act. The guy really hasn't been the same since Pyrrha sacrificed herself. Even when he smiled at the recent group meal, he didn't have that same brightness to him that he did in the past. So I'm curious if there's a part of him that may think that if this is the way he has to go, at least he can say that it's for some good cause while his pain can finally end. It's a rather depressing theory, I know, and I don't want the guy to die, especially like this, but it's notable how his wounds are so clearly shaping a lot of his thought process right now, good intentions or not. Something needs to help him realize that Pyrrha wanted him to live on, and she wouldn't want him to be this crippled kind of person devoid of honest happiness. But we'll have to wait and see where that nugget may go. For now though, Cinder takes Jaune's words and decides to have a new way to make him suffer. If the others mean so much more to him than he does, then he'll have to watch as she creates a fire spear and impales it through a defenseless Weiss. And the last shot of RWBY for 2017 is Weiss falling to the floor. Holy shit. Okay, so let's talk about that moment, shall we? First off, out of all the possible casualties, I didn't expect Weiss to be at the top of that list. But I'm putting it all on the table right now, Weiss isn't going to die here. Call it plot armor or whatever you want, but I still see too much left for her story to be told before we even consider herself possibly dying. She's still got to reunite with Winter, we have to see the Team RWBY reunion, we need to see her support Blake with her White Fang efforts after all of their past conflicts, and of course, she needs to reform the Schnee name. On top of that, the obvious note is where she got hit, as even with it being a nasty attack, it's through her side, not her chest like with Pyrrha. So long as there's no internal damage to anything vital, she should be okay. There's also the most likely narrative outcome of this, which I feel will come into effect very soon. That being Jaune finally unlocking his semblance. Is it reversing time, healing grave wounds, replenishing aura, or something to that nature? We won't know just yet, but I can see Jaune's power unlocking through emotional distress, and the knight being able to save Weiss, even if it leaves her out cold for the rest of the fight. I'm about as sure of that happening as I am Weiss not being axed off, and if I am wrong, which is a big outside chance, then color me very surprised. Now, what are my thoughts on the moment itself? Well, it's definitely shocking, that's for damn sure. And while I have seen a lot of people being divided on it, even those who do think Weiss will pull through, I liked it. It was emotionally investing, I liked the direction with all the sound fading out letting the moment sink in, and while it is cruel to leave it on such a cliffhanger, especially given cliffhangers have become a bit of a touchy subject lately in the fandom, the cutoff point does the job, leaving you asking questions and instantly creating hype for the next episode, like any good final scene should. Especially since we can tell this should lead to something big as a result, even if it's not Jaune's semblance. I seriously doubt Miles and Kerry would choose to give us a Weiss death panic attack just for the jollies. Something will happen as a result, so the cliffhanger and the moment itself does work for me. Speaking of which, I have heard some people ask, did it have to be Weiss? Which, to be honest, I think it kinda does, as it works out the best for what the RWBY are planning to do, and, you know, there's kinda not a lot of good options. Ruby's knocked out, so it can't be her. Yang's already had a near-death experience at this stage in her life, and while I'm sure Jaune would hate to lose either Ren or Nora, and he is closer to them than Weiss, having it be Weiss makes the most sense for grabbing the right emotions from both Jaune and us the viewer, and considering she is a much loved member of the main four girls, and someone who was a key person in Jaune's heart at one point. Plus, Ren and Nora also had their red flag moment in the last volume's closing moments. Not to say that everyone else is safe from harm because of this, but Weiss really is the best option available to get the most out of the other characters and us watching. Beyond that, for our first round of the heavy amount of fighting in this conflict, I enjoyed it just as much as well, though I do see some dents that could have been buffed out. I could have done with the Branwins and Yang vs Mercury getting more focus than they did, but I imagine with bigger emphasis needed to be given to other fights to build up that last scene, I am accepting of this uneven screen time balance, so long as it will be evened out in the future episodes. The animation was quite good, with the highest quality definitely being found with Weiss and Vernal, as well as Oscar. But there were moments where the motions were a tad floaty and maybe not as heavy hitting as they needed to be, most notably with some of Jaune's attacks, but overall, nothing was flat out awful, aided by the positives in the transitions and the epic suspenseful OST. Leo's moral descent continues to be an emotionally engaging bit to watch as we move on to more character-focused praising now in this review. He's not so much a villain, but more of a selfish man who is obviously trapped in a box, and his conflictions are leading to issues for our heroes that must be stopped. He's seemingly too deep in the muck to be truly saved, making him a tragic yet chaotic element in this battle. I'm also excited to see what Oscar takes from this fight as well, his first real bit of action, not just as a new defender, but in general too. And while brief, the Brandling's conflict does make it for a feisty bit as well, which hopefully means more highly emotional and high-level huntsman quality combat with both sides not willing to hold back anymore. I wouldn't really say that I have any further negatives to share beyond the demand for a tighter fight focused and animation quality. It all really depends on what the rest of the volume delivers. But onto the voice acting, it was definitely solid throughout, with Damon Mills and Vic Mignogna doing excellent work with their heavier, crushed tones. Though if I have to praise anyone in high regard for their emotional performance, it has to be Miles. Again, Jaune's had a very muted volume compared to past seasons, but when the scenes ask for Miles to give his best, I find myself fully hooked to the pain and fire in his voice, right to the end. So rightfully, he does deserve my voice acting gold star for the episode. So overall, I did find myself pleased with the episode. There definitely could be room for improvement depending on what lies ahead, and I pray that it can continue this intensity. It definitely grabbed me by the shoulders, and it kept me by the edge of my seat throughout it all. The gut punch at the end still had me stunned long after watching, which says a lot about it accomplishing its goal to hit the audience to their core. A crazy yet very thrilling way to kick off this closing portion of Volume 5. I just hope it can carry the quality towards the end while making sure to escalate the fighting and the drama in worthwhile ways and keep it balanced. It left me spinning, it had me guessing, and by the end, it damn near had me speechless. While far from perfect, its final reception depending on what comes next, for the final episode of 2017, I can honestly say it was a memorable one, with more reason to celebrate than anything else. But those are just my feelings, time to remind you to share yours. Was this a good way to close out the year for you guys? What's your opinion on Leo and Raven? And how do you feel about that epic and dramatic last shot? Let me know in the comments down below, and while you're at it, hit the subscribe and bell buttons to make sure you get every new video from me as they drop, and follow me on Twitter at ThatKaitoDan for more on all things RWBY, future content from yours truly, and more. Until next time though, have a good day or good night, and peace out.